It was supposed to be just another ordinary night. Mark had no reason to expect anything unusual, just another late shift, another cold walk home, another night lost to exhaustion. But that night, something changed, something he'd never forget. The rain had started to fall, fine and cold. Mark pulled his jacket tighter and turned the last corner toward home. That's when he noticed him, just standing there, under the flickering streetlight. A man, or at least something shaped like a man, still as a statue. His face was hidden behind a white porcelain mask, blank and emotionless. No patterns, no colors, just two hollow black holes for eyes. Mark froze. A shiver ran down his spine. "What the hell?" he whispered. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch. The only sound was the distant dripping of water and Mark's own breathing getting heavier by the second. He swallowed hard and forced his feet to move. Ignore him. It's just some weirdo. But as he walked past, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Mark didn't look back until he'd made it halfway down the block. But when he did, the masked figure was gone. The relief was instant, his chest rising and falling rapidly. See, just a prank. Some kid messing around. But the next night, it was there again. Same spot, same mask, same silence. This time, Mark stopped dead. "What's your problem, man?" he barked across the empty street. No response. Not a twitch. Mark laughed nervously, running a hand through his wet hair. "All right, you got me. You win," he muttered and picked up his pace. But the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps followed. He spun around. No one. The street was empty. That was the first night Mark double-locked his door and placed a chair against it. Still, sleep didn't come. Every sound from outside made his heart jump. By Monday, Mark couldn't concentrate at work. He kept glancing at the window, half expecting to see that pale mask staring in. His co-worker Jenna noticed. "You all right? You look scared," she asked. Mark let out a shaky laugh. "Some creep in a mask's been watching me. Probably just a prank, but feels wrong. Real wrong." Jenna's face darkened. "You sure it's a prank? I've heard stories." She leaned in. "There's this urban legend about a man in a mask. Follows people, watches, never talks. Sometimes he doesn't stop." Mark scoffed. "Come on, that's just a story." Jenna didn't smile. "Maybe, but if you see him again, don't engage. Just leave." That night, Mark was determined to act normal. Ignore it. It's all in your head. He walked home, head down, music blasting in his headphones. But he felt it. The weight of eyes. He looked up. The mask was there, closer this time, standing just across the street from his building. Still, unmoving, like a damn mannequin. Mark ripped off his headphones. "What do you want, huh?" The mask tilted, just slightly, almost curious. His stomach dropped. "It heard me." He ran, sprinting up the stairs, hands trembling as he unlocked his door. He didn't sleep, not a second. Every creak, every gust of wind felt like it was him, outside, waiting. 2 nights later, Mark came home to find something taped to his door. A simple handwritten note. 4 words. "I like your face." Mark's knees buckled. His breath came out in ragged gasps. He looked around wildly. No one. But he could feel it. He was being watched. Jenna nearly screamed when she saw him the next day. "Mark, Jesus, you look like you've seen a ghost." He handed her the note with shaking hands. "Tell me this is a joke." Jenna paled. That handwriting, it's old." like the kind of writing you see in old letters. Mark couldn't speak. He just stared ahead. Something inside him snapped. He couldn't live like this. Mark stayed at Jenna's that night, but sleep still didn't come. Around 3 a.m., he heard something outside. Curiosity, or madness, pushed him to the window. There he was, the mask, standing under the streetlight, still, silent, waiting. Mark broke down. "Why me?" he sobbed. "What do you want from me?" No answer, only that damned mask staring. Jenna found him curled up on the couch at sunrise. He didn't remember falling asleep. They went back to his apartment together. Everything was normal. Until Jenna gasped. The window. It was open. "I swear, I closed it," Mark whispered. On the kitchen table sat the mask. Not a photo, not a replica. The mask. White, smooth, cold. Mark dropped to his knees, trembling. How did it get in? Jenna couldn't answer. There was no forced entry, no sign of anyone. Desperation drove them to the local library, digging into old records, police reports, anything. And they found it. A man named Arthur Hale, local theatre actor, known for always wearing a white porcelain mask during performances. One night, he killed his co-star on stage, slit her throat in front of a live audience, smiling behind the mask. They said he was obsessed with perfect faces. The mask was never found after they dragged his body from the river. Jenna's voice trembled. "Mark, I think it's him." Mark laughed bitterly. "A ghost? Come on." But the mask, the note, the presence. It was real. Too real. They left town that night, bags packed, no goodbyes. Mark couldn't breathe until they were miles away. But fear has a way of following. At the motel, Jenna screamed. Mark rushed in, and there it was, on their bed, the mask. Jenna sobbed. "We can't run. Can we?" Mark stared at the mask. Slowly, he picked it up. The porcelain felt warm, alive. I think he wants me to wear it," Mark whispered. Jenna screamed, "Don't! Mark, please." But something inside him shifted. He was tired, so tired. He placed the mask on his face. When Mark opened his eyes, the world was silent, still. Jenna was gone. The room was empty. In the mirror, he saw himself, or what was left. The mask was part of him now. Flesh and porcelain fused together. He tried to scream, but no sound came. Only that same empty smile. He understood now. The mask didn't want to kill him. It wanted him, to become the next face behind the mask. And somewhere, another lonely soul walks home late at night, feeling watched, feeling chosen, because the mask is always looking for a new face. It all started with a message that seemed harmless, even exciting at first. Mark Stevens, a 43-year-old insurance adjuster from a quiet suburban neighborhood, received a personalized email invitation late on a rainy Wednesday night. The subject line read, "Exclusive private exhibition, Faces of the Forgotten." At first, he thought it was spam, but something about the wording caught his attention. It mentioned his full name, his love for antique items, and even referenced an old post he had made years ago in a local collectors forum. "Mark Stevens, your passion for relics and antiques has earned you a rare opportunity. Join us this Friday night for a once-in-a-lifetime private exhibition of rare ceremonial masks. Location will be shared upon confirmation." Mark furrowed his brows, muttering, "How the hell did they find that post?" But curiosity, That damned human flaw. It outweighed his better judgment. He replied with a simple, "I'm interested." The reply came swiftly. A single sentence with GPS coordinates and a chilling addition. "Come alone. Masks reveal truths only the unseen can handle." Mark's stomach churned as he read it out loud, but deep down, a thrill crept in. He hadn't felt excitement like this in years. Midlife had become a haze of bills, routine, and mild depression. Maybe this was the kind of break he needed. Friday came faster than he expected. Mark found himself driving out of the city limits, the rain tapping heavily against his windshield. The coordinates led him to an abandoned Victorian mansion nestled deep in the woods, its worn facade almost disappearing into the thick mist. Jesus, this place is straight out of a horror film, he mumbled, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Still, he parked, took a deep breath, and stepped out, determined not to back out now. Mark stood motionless in front of the mansion, staring at the enormous oak doors. Before he could raise his hand to knock, they creaked open by themselves, revealing a tall, lean man dressed entirely in black. His pale face bore a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You must be Mark. We've been expecting you." The way he emphasized "we" made Mark's throat tighten. He forced an awkward smile and nodded. "Yeah, I guess I am." The man introduced himself only as the curator. Without another word, he gestured for Mark to follow. The interior of the mansion smelled of mildew and old wood, with walls lined from floor to ceiling with glass cases, each containing a mask. Some were tribal, others theatrical, a few grotesque beyond words. Mark's eyes darted from one to the other. "Are these real?" he asked, barely hiding the tremble in his voice. The curator smiled thinly. "Oh, very real. Each with its own story." Something about the way he said "story" sent a cold shiver crawling down Mark's spine. They walked through a narrow hallway until the curator suddenly stopped. "Before you proceed, there are rules." His voice dropped an octave, serious and unyielding. "No touching the masks, no removing them from their cases. And above all, if a mask speaks to you, you must listen." Mark blinked, stunned. "Wait, what? Speaks to me? What the hell does that mean?" He laughed nervously, but the curator's expression remained stone cold. "You'll understand soon enough." The room they entered next was dimly lit, the flickering candlelight barely illuminating the hundreds of faces frozen in wood, bone, and ceramic. Every mask stared at him, or at least it felt that way. Mark swallowed hard, his throat dry. The air was heavy, suffocating. He forced a grin and muttered, "All right, let's get this show started." But the words felt hollow, like they belonged to someone else. The curator stopped before a tall glass case standing apart from the others. Inside rested a mask unlike any Mark had ever seen. Pale, human-like, but with no mouth. Only two hollow eye sockets stared back. "This one," the curator whispered, "was worn by a man sentenced to death for betraying his tribe. Legend says his screams of regret were so loud they cursed the mask itself." Mark chuckled nervously. "That's charming." He leaned closer, inspecting the cracked surface. "Looks old, authentic." As he stared, a faint sound, almost like a whisper, grazed his ear. Mark spun around instantly, heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" The curator only smiled. "Perhaps it's begun." Mark's chest tightened. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" he snapped. But the curator had already moved on, leaving Mark frozen in place, breathless. As they ventured deeper, The air grew colder. The masks seemed to change. Some smirked, others frowned, and a few even appeared to grimace. Mark could feel sweat sliding down his back despite the chill. Then it happened, clear as day. A voice, soft, female, and desperate. "Help me!" It came from his right. Mark spun so fast he nearly fell, staring wide-eyed at a mask carved like a weeping woman. "You heard that, right?" he gasped, his voice cracking. The curator turned slowly, his face unreadable. "You are receptive. Not many hear them their first time." Mark staggered back, waving a shaky hand. Okay, what is this? Some sick game? Hidden speakers?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. The curator simply smiled. "You think I control them? No, they choose who hears, and right now, they've chosen you." Mark's legs weakened, his breath coming out in ragged gasps. "I want out," he whispered. "I want out now." But it was too late. One of the masks, a plain white porcelain face, fell from its hook, landing silently at Mark's feet. He froze. The curator's voice came low and grave. "When the mask chooses, there's no walking away. You must wear it, or it will wear you." Mark stumbled backward, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What the hell are you talking about? I'm not putting that thing on." The air thickened, and suddenly the door slammed shut behind him. "You don't understand, Mark," the curator's voice boomed. "It's not a choice anymore." Mark stared at the mask. For a second, just a second, he swore it smiled. No, he muttered, but his hand, against his will, reached down, fingers trembling, wrapping around the cold porcelain. He screamed, "Someone help me!" "Please!" But only the masks watched. The moment his skin touched the mask, an icy pain shot through his arm, his veins turning black beneath his skin. Mark's mouth opened in a silent scream as unseen forces dragged him toward the center of the room. The curator watched with hollow eyes, whispering, "Witness the cycle." Mark's body jerked violently as the mask adhered to his face, melding with his flesh. His screams were muffled, his body convulsing on the cold floor. He clawed at the mask, trying to rip it off, but it was useless. His eyes darted desperately toward the curator. "Please, stop this." The curator's lips curved into a sinister grin. "You're part of the collection now." When it was over, silence fell like a heavy curtain. Mark's body slumped forward, lifeless, or so it seemed. Slowly, his head lifted. But it wasn't Mark anymore. The hollow porcelain mask now fused permanently to his face. The curator nodded approvingly. "Welcome, Mark. You've taken your place." Mark's mind was still there, screaming, crying, trapped, but no sound escaped. He could only watch, helpless, as the curator turned to the next mask in the line. "There will be others," he whispered. "There are always others." The candles flickered violently, and in the distance, another email was being sent. It all started with an invitation, an expensive-looking black envelope that arrived at Ethan Moore's office desk on an otherwise ordinary Wednesday. The envelope was thick, wax-sealed, with his name written in an elegant, unfamiliar script. Ethan stared at it longer than he should have. He didn't remember signing up for anything. Inside, the card read, "You are cordially invited to a private antique auction. Rare, one-of-a-kind items awaiting new owners. One night only, Friday, 8 p.m., the Hollow Estate." He should have thrown it away. He should have laughed it off as a prank. But something about the wording, one-of-a-kind items, clawed at his curiosity. Lately, life had felt dull. He was a 45-year-old insurance agent, divorced, stuck in routine. Maybe, just maybe, this was what he needed to break the monotony. Ethan didn't tell anyone, not his sister, not his co-workers. He just showed up, like a moth drawn to a flame. The hollow estate was tucked deep into the countryside, far enough that his phone lost signal halfway there. The mansion stood massive and silent under the moonlight, its windows dark, the iron gates wide open like it was expecting him. Only a few cars were parked outside, expensive ones, Bentleys, a Rolls-Royce, even a matte black Porsche. Ethan swallowed hard. What the hell was he doing here? Inside, the place smelled of old wood, leather, and something faintly metallic. Maybe blood. He brushed that thought away. A sharply dressed man greeted him. "Mr. Moore, welcome. Right this way." Ethan's pulse quickened. How did this stranger know his name? He followed him down a long, dim hallway into a grand room where other guests waited, sipping champagne. A glass was placed in his hand before he could decline. The auctioneer finally appeared, a pale woman in black velvet. Her voice was soft, but carried through the room. "Tonight, you'll witness the rarest collection of masks ever assembled. Masks that have seen history. Masks that hold stories and secrets." The lights dimmed. The first item was wheeled out. Ethan's stomach dropped. The first mask was wooden, tribal, with dark stains around the edges. The auctioneer smiled coldly. Worn by a shaman who vanished after a ritual. Last seen, eerie. Gasps filled the room. The bids started at $50,000. Ethan stood there, breathless, watching men and women casually offer more money than he made in years. Each mask was worse than the last. One was porcelain, said to have belonged to a 16th century noblewoman who was poisoned at a wedding. Another, a grotesque leather thing stitched with human hair. Ethan felt a cold sweat drip down his back. Why hadn't he left yet? Why couldn't he move? And then it appeared. "Our final piece," the auctioneer whispered. "The Mask of Belvoro. Italian origin, 1703. Its previous owners died within days of wearing it. Cause of death, officially unknown." The mask was simple. White, smooth, eerily perfect. But something about the eye holes, empty, black pits, made Ethan's heart pound against his ribs. Before he knew it, his hand was raised. 100,000. Silence. All eyes turned. "Sold," the auctioneer smiled. To Mr. Moore, the drive home was a blur. The mask sat on the passenger seat, its hollow eyes watching him. Ethan couldn't believe what he'd done. 100 grand on a mask. He kept glancing at it, his jaw tightening. "What the hell is wrong with me?" he muttered. By the time he got home, it was nearly 2 a.m. He placed the mask on the dining table, turned every light on, and stared at it. Hours passed. At one point, he could swear it had moved, slightly, just enough to unsettle him. The first night he didn't sleep. Every creak of the house made him flinch. He jumped at his reflection in the dark windows, heart hammering. The second night, he convinced himself he was being ridiculous. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey and sat across from the mask. "I own you now," he chuckled bitterly. "You're just paper mache or something." But the mask just sat there, silently judging. The third night, everything changed. Ethan wasn't sure why he picked it up. Maybe it was the whiskey, maybe boredom, maybe something worse. But he did. And the moment the mask touched his skin, a sharp, cold sensation ran down his spine. "Put me on," a voice whispered. Male, deep, right behind him. He spun around. No one. The house was dead silent. His breathing turned shallow. "You're losing it, Ethan," he whispered. But his hands, they moved on their own. The mask slid over his face like it belonged there. For a moment, just a breath. Everything was silent, peaceful, and then screaming. Not from Ethan, from somewhere else. The walls shook, the windows rattled. The voice returned, louder this time. "You took what was mine. Now, you wear me." Ethan clawed at the mask. It wouldn't budge. The next morning, Ethan stared into the mirror, pale, eyes sunken. Something off. Neighbors noticed first. The old woman next door flinched when she saw him. The mailman stopped smiling. Even the damn cat hissed. At work, people whispered. His boss called him in. "Ethan, you don't look... well, you're scaring people." Ethan laughed. A cold, unfamiliar sound. "I feel fine." But he wasn't. Nights became unbearable. He could hear voices, dozens of them, whispering, chanting, crying. Shadows moved in corners, and the mask, it was always there, even when he wasn't looking at it. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Staring at his own reflection became torture, because sometimes he swore. The mask stared back. The final straw came when Ethan's sister, Claire, visited. She gasped the moment she saw him. "Jesus, Ethan, what happened to your face?" He hadn't told her about the mask. Now, as she stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide with terror, he realized she wasn't seeing him. She was seeing it. "Get out," Ethan growled. His voice wasn't his. It was layered, distorted. Claire backed away, tears filling her eyes. "You need help." When the door slammed shut, Ethan collapsed. For the first time in days, he sobbed. "How do I get rid of you?" he whispered. And the mask. It laughed. That night, Ethan made a choice. He drove, somehow, back to the hollow estate. But it was gone. The land was empty, overgrown, like no one had lived there for years. Desperation clawed at him. He screamed into the night, begging whoever, whatever had sold him the mask to take it back. No answer, only the wind. At dawn, Ethan sat in his car, mask on his lap. He felt empty, hollow. "I'm done," he whispered. Slowly he raised the mask. One last time. It slid on like a second skin, cold, familiar. And this time, Ethan didn't fight. He felt himself fading, drowning in the voices. The last thing he saw was his own reflection, smiling back. Months later, another black envelope arrived, this time at a different man's desk. "You are cordially invited. The cycle continues."